Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I see some colleagues in the audience, Durham's in the house. I want to thank you all for this wonderful invitation. I'm the one who's honored to be in this room of seasoned practitioners who are trying to make a difference in their cities, which ultimately impacts the greatness of this country. And I want to thank Kwame and Jeffrey as well for your leadership in this space and making place-based not just a term, but as a model of what's possible. Let's hear it. And it is important that we have opportunity to sit and think and be, and sometimes commiserate in terms of what's happening in our various communities. And so I'm so pleased that you have this opportunity to think and be with each other. It's really powerful. You're energized to go back home and do the good work and get into good trouble, as some may say. I was really inspired to see that neighborhood in the Mission District. I had the great pleasure of being there not too long ago and really seeing the powerful work that they're doing block by block by block. And even though HUD wasn't mentioned, it was HUD's funds. Just a little hint for you all when you're talking about your good work. Just letting you know. But it was really great to see HUD's funds at work, and not just the funds we use for affordable housing, but also the funds that we do that's so critical in community development, quality community development. So I won't hold it against you, Mission folks. We're good. We're good. We're good. And I also want to just say that Bill Wilson is one of my heroes. I was telling a story earlier that I have always been a fan of his work since Truly Disadvantaged. It was like game on. And just to show you the humility and the generous nature of this individual, when I was the executive director of the DC Housing Authority, I just randomly emailed him and said, hey, I'm doing this work in real time with the people and the communities that you have researched and talked about. Would love an opportunity to just talk to you. This brother emailed back, offered to come down to sit with me and my board, and had one of the best conversations about where policy and practice intersect. So just to show you the greatness of this gentleman, thank you, Bill Wilson, for all the work that you do. So I am from the US Virgin Islands. I say that because it is my place. And while I've lived here in the States longer than I've lived in St. Thomas, it is still the place that I claim that shaped me the most. It's the place that educated me, the place where I went to the doctor, my first trip to the library, the Enid Embaugh Library, the place where I learned to dance, the place where I learned to manage sadness. And it's where young Adrianne was groomed to become this Adrianne today. I was lucky, and I was blessed. But I don't have to tell this crowd that not every child is that lucky and that blessed to be in a community and in an area that provides the nurturing that every child needs to thrive. I think it was Frederick Douglass who said it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. So to me, an investment in place is fundamentally an investment in children. And so what does that mean to invest in a place? How do we rebuild or develop places that provide meaning, that sustain communities, that enable futures? I have been around HUD's work for not years, but decades now. And I've seen the evolution, my friend Carol has too, seen the evolution of how HUD has looked at place-based investments. And it used to be, let's build the housing, all right? We gotta build affordable housing, which is critical. To have place, you also need some place to live. Let's build housing, which we do. And it evolved to, we have to make sure that the property is taken care of, which is critical too. And HUD evolved into, well, it's not just the units and the property, it's actually the entire community. We need to encourage anchor institutions and philanthropy and others to play strong roles in not just rebuilding, but sometimes, if necessary, reknitting. And when you think about models like the Harlem Children's Zone and purpose-built housing, purpose-built communities rather, these are the models that I know so many of you and so many of our grantees use to be able to figure out how do we do that? How do we make sure that while we need the housing, that we are people-centric as we go about our work? And that's what the Choice Neighborhoods program has now sought to do. There's 3 core goals: housing, people, and neighborhoods. And through the program, we link new mixed-income housing developments with comprehensive social services and physical neighborhood improvements. This model ensures that public housing authorities, local governments, and their partners are focused on investing in people and communities and moving beyond just the bricks and sticks. The Choice Neighborhood Program is also one of HUD's tools for redeveloping distressed HUD-assisted housing. This means public housing, privately owned multifamily housing, and also tribal housing. But it's not just redeveloping these properties, it's, as I mentioned, centering the people. It's requiring outcome-based participatory process. Don't just get the sign-in sheet. Make sure there's an opportunity for people to have true inclusion. 20% of the Choice Neighborhood funds can be used to provide case management and supportive services to housing residents and to help promote their economic stability. And so we look for bold ideas around not just jobs, but homeownership, entrepreneurship, wealth building. In addition, up to 15% of these funds may be used to undertake critical community improvements in the neighborhood, designed to improve the physical appearance of the neighborhood and promote economic development. And this work is highly reliant on attracting private partners. In fact, for every $1 of choice funds, our grantees leverage $8 of private and other public funding. And some of these grantees are in the room right now. The remainder of the grant funds are used to redevelop the targeted housing project into new energy-efficient and mixed-income housing. And we have right now over 30,000 new units that are being planned by our grantees. We've been able to see tremendous success through this program, but we are constantly working to improve. It's part of that evolution that HUD holds so dearly in terms of making sure we're continuing to refine our model for highest impact. We offer our Choice Neighborhood grants in 2 very different ways, and it sounds like many of you may already be aware of this. We have our planning grants, which allows communities the space to think and be and hope for the future, and what does that look like? What is the aspirations to build on an existing community, build on their strengths of the community, and make it even bolder. But the real gold is our implementation grants. It's up to $50 million per grant to implement a transformation plan, which includes redevelopment of the housing site. Just this past July, we awarded $370 million to Choice Neighborhoods funding to 8 different cities across the country. One of them right here, we gave $40 million to Lake Charles. I don't know if anyone from Lake Charles is here, maybe not. But I had the great joy of traveling to Wilmington. I think you're here, Wilmington. There you go. Always walk with your posse, like always. Always walk with your posse. It was great to be in Wilmington, and I know Logan had to step out just to see how the hard work of thinking and being and talking about what the residents want manifests itself into this grant, and I look forward to being back when you all are continuing your journey. Congratulations. But I brought my list of existing choice grantees under this administration. We've got Durham, Knoxville, Omaha, Tulsa. Okay, all right. I have Atlanta, Birmingham, Lake Charles, Miami, Philly, Pittsburgh, Tucson, Wilmington, and of course, all of our planning grantees. We're also very proud of you and our investments in the communities that you will rebuild. But choice isn't the only way. It's not the only place-based program that HUD is working on. At my direction, HUD created a Rural Prosperity Coordinating Council, so I was pleased to hear mention about the work we need to do in our rural communities. And it consists of staff across the HUD department. So we work, even though it's housing and urban development, we have a lot of work and equities in our rural communities as well. And so we gather everyone just to make sure folks are not working in their siloed spaces and they're talking across the department. But even more than that, the administration has created a rural partners network so that each department is talking about ways that we can create better synergies and braiding of our efforts in rural neighborhoods across the country. And it's just one of the demonstrations of the Biden-Harris administration's commitment to rural America, particularly those communities that are Black and brown that are intentionally left behind by their states. I'm not going to call names. I'm just going to say. You know, we have 37 community networks that's been designated, and each one of these communities has assessed their local needs in developing governance models to support the needs and encouraging their community partners. I want to point out one other, I think, really critical place-based work that HUD does that may not be terribly obvious, but it's the work we do in disaster recovery. Think about it. Think about what happens after a disaster. There's no more critical need that many families have in terms of reknitting a community when everything has been destroyed. And you're not just starting from scratch. For some communities, you're starting from nothing. And so while FEMA, our wonderful partners, are always the first ones in, and they're responding, it is HUD, in many ways, that years after the headlines of that storm has moved on, and you're on to the most recent hurricane or tornado or flooding, it is usually HUD's funds that are there helping to make sure that housing is coming back, that schools are coming back, that hospitals are coming back. Infrastructure is being mitigated to withstand the next storm. Are we perfect in the federal government in doing this work? No. But we certainly are making sure we want those resources to be used, and not just used well and spent quickly, but making sure that the folks who most need, who are most vulnerable before the disaster, have the opportunities to come back home and be part of whatever happens next. And we don't need to look too far here in this state to know what that looks like. And I will add to that I was in Maui about a month ago and visited the burnt grounds of Lahaina, and to talk about a community that truly, truly needs rebuilding and rebirth, the historic nature and the sacredness of that land, talking to the concerns so many Native Hawaiians have about what comes next, letting them know the federal government stands with them and try to do everything we can, that it's not just the large investors that come and take over, that we will stand by them and resource them and provide technical assistance so that they're able to rebuild their community. That is place-based work in action as well, my friends. You know, I know that my colleague, Deputy Secretary Martins, will be speaking with you in a little bit. And let me say, the deputy secretaries of the federal government are, I'm not gonna, are great people. Like we, you know, we are the ones. We are all friends. We are all friends. And that's probably what I mean by great. We are all friends. Like, there is no issue, there is no colleague I have that I can't text and say, hey, Andrea, we got to figure out these Medicaid waiver issues that we're having, you know? Or that I can't go to my colleague Wally in Treasury and say, we got to find ways to have LIHTC work better with the home program. So we have created this amazing, my words, probably theirs too, network of doers to try to make sure the federal government is working as best we can for those of you trying to figure out how to work with us. And so I'm thrilled that Cindy will be here speaking with you, and she and I have recommitted to working with each other at a principal level. Our staff meet and talk all the time, but she and I have recommitted to work at a principal level to make sure we are empowering them in the work that they're doing that is more outcome-based, but even more importantly, we're infusing perhaps some creativity and more ambitious goals about things that HUD and Department of Education can do together. So I look forward to you seeing her in just a little bit. Let me end by this. You know, we are all embarking on work that's critical to all of your communities. And as I said at the start, for me, and for many, our amazing Secretary Fudge, so much of this work is embedded in making sure that we're creating a better country for our children, where folks can wake up every day, feel loved, feel safe, feel that, like I felt, that if you, I don't necessarily long for the old days where you stepped in the street and your neighbor said, "What you doing?" You know, I don't necessarily, I'm not saying I want to go back to that, because that was annoying, but I do want to say that, you know, and this is a term that's often used, but it's a reason for it. It truly does take a village. It takes a zone. It takes all of us in this room to figure out, how do we make sure that our communities are thriving? How do we sometimes get out of the community's way to make sure we're building on their strengths and not coming with our big ideas to say, here's what you should be doing? How do we learn humility in this work? So I wish all of you an inspiring moment with each other so you can be galvanized for where we need to go. You know, I mentioned Frederick Douglass' quote earlier, that it's easier to build strong children, but sometimes it's not easy to do that and get the resources we need in the town that I work in. So it takes your voices, your push, your talking to the people who hold the purses to make sure that programs like Choice, like there's more vouchers, we have more CDBG, we have more money for senior education. It really takes that work to ensure that my deputy secretaries and I are able to do what we need to do to support you all. So stay blessed. Thank you for your work, and thank you again for an opportunity to engage with you. Stay well.